It's time for the word of the week. This week's word is a great word, not because it's of great theological significance or importance, not because it litters the New Testament with occurrences. It's a pretty obscure word. The reason I say it's a great word is a personal reason. I just really like to say this word. This week's word is skuthropos. Let me say it again because it's so much fun. Skuthropos. And skuthropos is an adjective that's almost always used as a substantival replacement for a noun, and it means to be serious looking or sad looking. In classical Greek, prior to the New Testament period, it meant that you looked gloomy, that you looked deep in thought, or that you looked embittered. In the New Testament, we see skuthropos, isn't that fun to say? Skuthropos, used in two different ways. One, it's used to describe someone putting on an affect in order to portray themselves as something that they're not. And the second way is an accurate representation of genuine sadness. We're going to take a look at both. Let's start out in Matthew chapter 6, verse 16. This is Jesus speaking. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. In other words, by getting people's attention for their appearance of suffering as they're fasting, the attention they receive is the reward. Let's take a look at this "do not look gloomy like the hypocrites" phrase in Greek. Me ginesthe hos hoi hypocritai skuthropoi. Skuthropoi. It's just as fun in the plural as it is in the singular. Let's break it down. Me, not, ginesthe. This is an imperative of ginomai. So do not become hos, like, hoi hypocritai skuthropoi, the hypocritical sad faces, the sad looking hypocrites. Let's go back to ginesthe for a second. So me ginesthe, I mentioned it is an imperative, but you may look at it and you say to yourself, well, ginesthe looks like it is present, deponent, indicative, second person plural. It sure does look like that. What's the first clue that it's not indicative? It's the me. If it was in the indicative mood, we would expect oo or ook to negate it, but because we get the me, we're given a bonus tip that we're not dealing with an indicative, we're dealing with one of the other moods, and in this case, if you consult your, which lexicon is it? The analytical lexicon. If you consult your analytical lexicon, you'll see that the parsing for the second person plural imperative is the same as the indicative. So here we have the command. Do not make yourself, or do not be like, hos, like, whom? The hypocrites with the sad faces. Early on in Koine Corner, one of our first words of the week was hypokrites. And we said that it was from the Greek theater and it meant to answer from under a mask, like an actor. So a hypocrite is someone who's playing a role, who's acting a part, whose answers come from a mask that they're wearing, that it's not really them. And Jesus here says, don't become like the hypocrites with the sad faces. What kind of mask are they answering from under? They've put on a sad-faced mask to portray to the world that they're fasting. Don't mind me, I'm fasting. Oh, you poor thing, you look exhausted. That's their reward, Jesus says. The attention that they get from wearing the sad face mask to tell the world that they're fasting. Oh, I'm so weak and hungry. I'm so exhausted. That's their reward. Nice act, right? Great stuff. So actors wearing a sad-looking mask, playing a sad-looking part, engaged in a performance. Jesus says, don't be like that, because that in itself is its reward. The attention you're garnering with that affectation is your reward. But let's look at what he says after that in verses 17 and 18. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face. In other words, fix your hair, take care of yourself, put on a good face, not a sad mask. Put on a good face, go out into the world, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. It's great stuff. It's the opposite of the act. The imperative in verse 17 here is me phanes, that you should not be seen, that it should not be seen, pardon me. You know, you shouldn't portray the act of fasting. Nobody should be able to look at you and know. Fix your hair, wash your face. Don't let anybody even know what's going on. It's kind of spectacular. Fasting isn't a public act, Jesus says. It's not a performance. If anything, you should be striving to conceal it from the public. Now we go on to the genuine use of our word of the week. What's our word of the week? Skuthropos. So much fun to say. So in the end of Luke's Gospel, chapter 24, we read about two disciples walking on the road to Emmaus. And Jesus appears to them. The post-resurrection Jesus appears to them, but they were kept from recognizing him, Luke says. And listen in verse 17 of chapter 24 what Jesus said. And he said to them, "What is this conversation that you are holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. And the word for looking sad is the plural, again, skuthropoi. So there they were, looking sad. Why were they looking sad? They tell us in verse 21, we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. So they say to Jesus, don't you know what's happened here in the last few days? The one that we were certain was the Messiah has been crucified and is dead. So believing that the Messiah is dead, they were genuinely and visibly sad. They were, in fact, skuthropoi. Not hypocritai skuthropoi, not actors putting on a sad face mask, but their appearance, their outward appearance was an accurate depiction of what they were feeling internally. They, in fact, were skuthropoi. So that's our word of the week. Fantastic word of the week. Skuthropos in the singular, skuthropoi in the plural, both nominatives. And so if you see folks putting on a sad face, if they're playing up an act for effect, what are they? They are hypocritai skuthropoi. They're hypocrites wearing a sad face mask. Hopefully that'll never be the case for you. Don't be a hypocrites skuthropos. Let the reality of who you are be you. And even sometimes it's appropriate, according to Jesus, when you're going through some struggles, to fix your hair, wash your face. Nobody needs to know that you're fasting or that you're going through something else. That doesn't mean go get help when you need it. Go get help when you need it. But putting on an act to get people to feel sorry for you is not the point, particularly when it comes to fasting or other religious observances. Word of the week, skuthropos. Great word. Look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, Karis Kai, grace and peace to you.